It's our season wrap-up episode. We will talk about the strategy lessons learned from this season, plus the fantasy MVPs of 2021. Ian Kahn of The Athletic joins us next on Beat the Shift. Welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me as always is Ruvain Guy. How are you, Ruvain?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. End of the season. Are you you tired? You're glad this is over? That you can't wait till next year? What's your attitude right now?
A little of everything. I like watching the playoffs, watching how these players do now because that can be seen as how they're going to do next year a little bit as well. Maybe you'll see something different now. But I am tired. But I do miss setting up the fabs every week. That's something that we'll have to wait until next April to do.
Yeah, I felt it on Sunday night when I'm like, wait, I don't have to do anything this week. So it definitely hit me then. But let's bring on our guest. He from The Athletic. He does the Under the Radar podcast there. Fantastic show. Welcome to the show once again, Ian Kahn. How are you, Ian?
Hey, guys. How are you? Ruvain, Ariel, pleasure to be with you.
Doing great.
Doing well.
Hey, before we start the show, since it is the end, do you have a most memorable moment of the baseball season proper this year? Just throwing that out there.
I was thinking about that, and I think for me, it's going to be the last game of the season for the Yankees. As a Yankee fan, I am a Yankee fan. My dad was born in Washington Heights. I was born, put a Yankee hat on my head in 1972 when I was born. Suffered through the 80s and early 90s. When Aaron Judge got that hit against Andrew Kittredge in the last game to get the Yankees into the playoffs, which unfortunately they could not sustain in Boston, I would have to say, I think, and to combine that, if you want to hear the full story, I told the story on the Under the Radar podcast, so I'm not going to repeat it here. But that hit by Aaron Judge not only got the Yankees into the playoffs, which was amazing, but also was the deciding hit in a year-long dynasty league where it was coming down to average, and it came down to that hit. And so I would have to say that that's my most memorable moment of the baseball season.
Oh, wow. Can you imagine if it went the other way, that he gets the hit, Yankees win, but yet you lose the league? Can you imagine that one?
Yeah, I can imagine that. Because I can think back to last year when it came down to the final day of the season between you and myself in Tout Wars, and Keegan Aiken did not give me the 5 innings that I needed him to give me to win my second back-to-back championship in Tout Wars. So yes, I felt it then, and so I kind of got the bitter last year, and I got a little bit of the sweet this year.
Yeah. Well, positive for you this year. You won AL Labor by a record number of points, so congratulations on that. That's got to be pretty memorable as well, although I think you had that wrapped up, half to 2/3 of the way into the season, so you weren't sweating it out the last day.
No, I was sweating the final score because I wanted to break the record, and so it was a bit of a sweat all the way till the end in its own way. So, but thank you, yeah, and it was a good season in AL Labor. I think we're going to talk later about the successes of the year and what to learn from, the failures this year, what to learn from, so we can hold off on the rest of that. But yes, that would probably be actually, I would argue that the Aaron Judge hit is more memorable because that was a singular moment and a singular, you know what I'm saying? That's the most memorable moment of the fantasy baseball season. So I think that's both the same for me. I'm happy and excited to hear what you guys, what was most memorable for both of you.
Ruvain?
Well, I have a few most memorable moments, and it's basically when I got to go some baseball games this year. I got to see Jacob deGrom pitch in 5 of his 10 home starts. I got to see Acuna hit a home run versus the Mets. I got to see the powerful Blue Jays lineup being stifled by Rich Hill, someone who's actually older than me, which is a really good, fun thing. But just getting back at the ballpark and being able to cheer, watching the apple go up, cheering with the crowd, cheering at the same time as a group of people, and that was my most memorable moment, just being there and hearing the roar of the crowd.
Yeah, and you know what? I think I was at that same game as you with the Rich Hill start with against the Blue Jays, and that was my most memorable moment. I went with my family. We had a Pete Alonso homer that game. McNeil came with a pinch hit RBI, and I remember just high fiving everybody in the crowd. It was. I enjoyed that. My wife loves Familia on the team and loves when they bring in Diaz with the trumpets. So it was just a fun day at the ballpark. And really, that's what baseball is all about. It's about family fun. If I had to pick a memorable fantasy moment, in one of the weeks, I was up by about 3 points to the last game of the week, but I had Joe Musgrove going, and he gave up like 7 runs to the Dodgers. I'm like, oh no, he's going to get the loss. I'm going to lose because the loss is worth -5. And all of a sudden, down 7, the Dodgers came back. I'm like, oh my goodness. And the Dodgers tied it up, and I didn't even need a win there. A tie was good. That cleared the loss, and I won the week. So, that head-to-head week was pretty fun. Somewhere in the middle there.
Can I add one more memorable moment of the baseball season based on
Yeah.
your guys? I went to opening day for the Yankees this year, and
Nice.
it was back when it was only like 8,000 people in the stands. And so we went to, my wife and my 2 sons and I went to 2 games this season, both before everything opened up more widely. So opening day, and that was remarkable because it was the first time sort of out of the house amongst other people, though it was fully socially distant, felt very safe. And then we went one more time and sat. I bought tickets in like the bar mitzvah section at Yankee Stadium, which is where you can get you have the buffet downstairs. So I call it the bar mitzvah section, and and I got them for like $80 a ticket, like last minute. It was great. And Phil Nevin of Phil Nevin fame threw a ball to my older son. And I said something. I said, "Hey, Mr. Nevin, congratulations on your son Tyler going to Baltimore." So I was like, "Hey, how about a ball for my son?" And he threw it to my son. Had his glove, caught the ball, and it was a very sweet moment. And I have a lovely picture that I'm looking at right now on my desk of the 4 of us at that game. So it was really pretty special. Yeah.
Did Phil Nevin tell your son to leave the game early also just to get home quick?
No. But he did wave him home inappropriately.
He didn't wave him home. Okay.
I mean, listen, if we're going to bring up hard times and hard thoughts, I guess it probably is pretty good for you guys that Jared Kelenic struggled this year. But if you look what he did over the course of those last 6 weeks, you got a superstar on your hands right
Not
there.
familiar with that player. Anyways,
Yeah,
on to our. Let's get started with the show. On our strategy section tonight. Tonight we're doing our season recap, our season wrap-up episode, and talk about what happened, what we think we can pick out of this past year to help us the next year, and all that. I want to throw out a question. On draft day, what do you think is more important, Ian? Is it having superior knowledge of the players and really knowing, or actually knowing how to value players and your auction/drafting skills? Like, which do you think is more important? Obviously, you have to know both. You have to know the players and you have to know what you're doing. But which do you think actually is more important?
I think they're both incredibly important. I know you and I have sort of gone back and forth on this over time, and I've come to your standpoint on the need for understanding the value of players. I used it to great effect in AL Labor and in other leagues as well. But the ability to scout players and to glean information based on what they're doing over the offseason and even in spring training, I think is also incredibly valuable. Also, the ability to be looking at what you expect in terms of at-bats and innings pitched for players, like how people are doing and the psychology of the managers. So I know where you want to go. You wanted to make it that it's really more important, that almost it doesn't matter what the players are, it just matters what the values are, and I get that. But I also think you're missing out on something if you're not also including. So I'm not going to pick one over the other. I'm going to say a deep understanding of both.
I'm just trying to generate some good discussion here. Ruvain, what are your thoughts on this?
I agree. It is both, but I think you have to have the better knowledge of the players to have the better valuation and to have the better drafting skills, because nowadays with so many injuries and so many people getting brought up, sent down, if you don't know that you don't have that base of player knowledge of who's the backup, who's going to be next, who's a top prospect and stuff like that, you're not going to be able to draft a decent and a deep team. In order to win these days, you have to have a very deep team. And if you have a better knowledge of the player pool, the players themselves, you will have a better auction or a draft because you'll have a better knowledge of who to take and when.
So I can't argue that both are not important, but I will say that the valuation skills and the balancing risk and stuff is way undervalued. I think not enough people pay attention to it. I mean, I'm in a fantasy football league, and I don't follow football in the least, but I created some formula, and I valued the players, and I haven't lost a game yet this season. I've blown out everybody because in some ways, having less knowledge sometimes is a help in the sense of you don't have any biases. When I go to an auction and there's two guys who are worth $15, I want to say that they're both worth $15. I don't want to say, well, I like this guy better. No, if I'm saying that they're $15, then you should be indifferent to who you take. So
yes, but wait, hold on. You were all in on Trent Grisham this year, all in coming into the season. He was an undervalued player. I think you had him at like $18 coming into the season. Okay, I was looking at Trent Grisham and the way that he did it, and I said, yeah, he's not going to do that based on what I thought he was going to do against left-handers. He ends up with $10 as his end-up value, and that's based on me looking at his swing and looking at what I expected him to grow into. That matters. Eddie Rosario, another guy who you were super high on, $18 again. $8 over the course of the season, a guy that I was not high on and that I thought was gonna fall, and he did. Now he also had injury issues, and you and I argue over Eddie Rosario as much as you can argue over you want blintzes with cheese or just with strawberries and cheese, right? You can argue it, but I do think that that there's more to the game than just the numbers. I still believe that. I believe that firmly. I believe
sure.
that watching a player's growth and what you think that's going to happen with that player is hugely important.
Sure. But you know what? For every example you have that way, every two examples you have that way, I can probably come up with three examples there. Marcus Semien, I had valued pretty high. Eduardo Escobar, oh my goodness, and that worked out. I mean, the theory is when you have projections and you have numbers like that, you're not going to get the calls all right. You're going to get a call certain percentage of the time right. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that I don't know that my scouting ability, and maybe yours is better, and maybe somebody else has a better scouting ability than the projections say, but for most people, I think that projections are probably more superior than the average. And not to say that you shouldn't. If you have knowledge of a player, you certainly should use it. If you know a player is not swinging correct in the spring, you should take that knowledge. But above all else, you should at least know where your base is, and you should at least say, okay,
I agree with that. I agree with that. I don't disagree with that, and I think that. But what I don't love is the idea that the values are more important. Because look, Robbie Ray was a guy that I was on this show talking to you about, right? And the projections did not have him for anything close to. Anything. He was a $3 player or a $4 player, but it was the understanding of what he did in spring. People say spring training stats mean nothing. Sometimes they do. Because if you remember, I talked about this on your show, that 26 of 28 pitches in his first start of the spring, he threw for strikes. That signified to me that he had finally found his command. You're not going to find that in the projections. The projections are already taken care of before that.
And of course, the hardest thing about projections is the playing time and role. Certainly, I do think, though, that the human eye has a better detection on where the manager's playing in the lineup, which isn't, so you can gain more information, especially on playing time, and I think that wins out. Here's another question for you. Which is more true? A, and of course, again, these are both true, but which is more important? A, would you say that leagues are won on draft day, or would you say B, leagues are won with the in-season moves and pickups?
Ravan, you first or me first?
I'm probably going to say different than you. I'm going to say draft day. It's 100% won in draft day, just based on what I said before. Because if you build a deep team, you can sustain injuries and you can still have a good team. If you pick right, if you quote unquote get lucky sometimes, you can ride the wave. If you pick that correct ace and he didn't get hurt or he didn't bomb out or have a problem with sticky stuff or anything like that, then you picked right and you were able to carry the season based on the draft day alone. Most of the time you can't do that. You do need to have some in-season managing done to be able to get certain categories and stuff like that. But I think it's won on draft day, and the fab stuff and everything like that, that's just gravy to be added to your train.
Here's what I would say. You may be surprised to hear this. I agree with you, Ruvain. I do. However, it depends on the format. If it's a 15-team league or higher, it's 100% draft day, because without drafting well, you're constantly fighting. Okay. But if it's a 12-team league, like the Tout Wars head-to-head, the draft is less important because there's much more value to be had on the waiver wire. And you can find the hot hand and develop the hot hand, right? Someone like Cedric Mullins was not drafted in a 12-team league. He is going to be drafted in a 15-team league, right? And so, like, if you don't get him there, well, not always, actually. I think he was available in Tout Wars. Is a very funny story there, but we don't have to go into that. But I do think that it's the draft. I go back to what Fred Zinke said, and you'll forgive me if you heard me say this before, but what his favorite part of playing the game is, and I think I'm on board with him now. His number one favorite thing is the draft. His number two favorite thing is the preparation for the draft, and then number three is in-season game and trading, right? And I'm kind of there, I kind of think that the that's where you find your great success, and that goes back to what Ariel is saying. So I'm not downgrading, Ariel, what you're saying about the values, because having a real understanding of those values and where the depth in a particular draft is huge. It's really huge. And so I would argue, along with Ruvain, that what happens on draft day is mostly determinative of what you're going to see over the course of the season. I mean, it's sort of obvious at this point.
Yep, my answer is exactly Ian's, actually. I think that for deep leagues, 15-team mixed or mono leagues, the draft is more important. I'll give it like a 60-40 edge. In shallower leagues, 12-team mixed and under, I believe that the in-season is more important.
Yeah, look at us.
Because there's more stuff to come on the wire. So, but I put this question to Twitter. Actually, they say in-season. 75% of the audience responded that in-season is more important. But I disagree. I think the draft is way more important than people think. So there you go. So before we do some lessons learned, it's time for the Injury Gurus Trivia of the Week.
Well, we're going to be talking about lessons learned here, and one of the things we're going to be talking about is coming away from the first or second round with speed. Is it necessary? So what I did was I looked back and I looked at the final standings of the top 25 stolen base guys this year in baseball, 17 or more stolen bases. How many of them were drafted in the first or second round? Of the top 25 stolen base guys, 17 or more, how many were drafted in the first or second round?
I just did this today on Twitter, so I know the answer. So
you know the answer? Okay.
Okay. I'm going to say 5.
In the first or second round, the answer is 7.
Using the ADP from NFBC from January 1st to April 1st of this year, I got 4. I got Tatis, Turner, Jose Ramirez, and Ronald Acuna. So 21
What about
were
Bichette?
not.
Where was Bichette?
Bichette fell just out of the second round.
I have
according
Bichette.
to
okay. I have Bichette.
Okay, so if you had it there,
then
then the answer is 5. But
Yes.
let's just think about that. Of the top 25 stolen base guys, only 5 were in the top 2 rounds drafted. So what does that mean? Does that mean you're supposed to go chasing for speed in the first 2 rounds? I don't think so, because you can get speed the rest of the draft.
Yeah, so let me add numbers that I came up with today for players with at least 15 stolen bases, so maybe a little bit deeper than the 17 you said.
Yeah.
I have in the first 4 rounds 12 players. In the next 18 rounds, 13 players. After that, just 7. So does that mean that you really need to walk away of the first 4 rounds with at least somebody that's going to steal you some bases? Is that a lesson learned for you, Ian?
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, that's a lesson I've had, because the thing that I don't like doing is chasing anything later in the draft. I want to keep finding, and auction's slightly different, right? But let's say just in a pure draft situation, I want to make sure that I get some speed. That I really just, I think it's imperative to get some speed early, so that you're not spending the rest of your draft passing up on other guys that you really want, to make sure that you get, oh God, I can't even think of his name, the center fielder for Cleveland right now.
Oscar Mercado?
No. He used to play for Houston.
Zimmer?
Nope.
Zimmer.
Nope. He used to play for
You talking about Miles Straw?
Yes, Miles Straw. Like that, I got to reach for Miles Straw. Thank you, Ariel. It's been a long day. I got to reach for Miles Straw to make sure that I get that speed. And then you're getting guys who knows if he's going to hold that playing time, right? That's the concern for me. So for me, it says I want to get some speed. Certainly in the first 4 rounds, definitely want to get some speed for sure.
Okay, so let me ask you this theoretical question. Okay, who would you rather take? Let's say you're picking third. And here are the 2 choices for the first round. You can either pick Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or Bo Bichette. Who you're picking in the first round with those 2 only?
Well, with the third pick, those are my only choices with the third pick.
I'm just who do you prefer for a first round pick next year?
Trey Turner.
I didn't say Trey Turner.
Fernando Tatis Jr.
No. I'm specifically picking a guy, Guerrero, who does not steal.
I'm not going to take Guerrero. I mean, I really like Bichette. I don't know if I'm going as high as 3 on Bichette, though.
Well, no, the point of the question is, should Guerrero be taken as high as he does because he doesn't steal?
For me, no. I mean, for me, that's a problem, I mean, his batting average is really good. You can almost argue that Ohtani has more value. Maybe not more value, but more. You know what? More.
Ohtani is a 260 hitter maximum.
I understand. I understand that's a major issue. But he's also going to give you 25 steals.
Right, Ohtani gives you steals. Well, the question here is take a guy who's phenomenal but doesn't steal. I think that they have to be downgraded. I think I would rather take Bo Bichette than Guerrero. And if I have to play an auction, I think my value for Bichette is going to be higher than Guerrero because of categorical risk here. That Bichette spreads the risk a lot better.
I would have felt a lot better if it was a question at pick number 6 than at pick number 3. Because I don't know if I take Bichette.
It's the same thing. Same question. You're pick 6 and Vlad's still on the board, and so is Bichette. I think the answer is Bichette right now. Because of the way that the steals are going, because of the construct, you're going to be left chasing all along. Well, I mean, you can take Pete Alonso a couple rounds later for the power. That takes care of Guerrero's power. The RBIs, you can take some guy all the way down. But what you can't get is those steals and the average and the runs. I think that's the argument, that it's a risk. It's a risk reason, and it's a categorical risk. And
okay,
and
well
it's
then
risk
here's a
adjusted
better
price.
question. Here's a better question. What about taking either Ohtani or Trey Turner? Trey Turner will give you more stolen bases, but Ohtani will give you more power.
Turner could be the number 1 overall pick next year.
In fact, I think he should be. I mean, he would be. He's been my choice every year in every NFBC. Somehow, I'm always getting him, whether it's at 5 or at 8 or at 6 or at even 9 sometimes. The upside with Turner is just so remarkable because he's going to give you average. He's going to give you 30 to 40 stolen bases over the course of a season. He's also going to hit you 20, even if he doesn't hit you 25 to 30 home runs. I just think Turner is the, and now with the dual eligibility as well, with the second base shortstop, I don't know. To me, that's the guy.
Yeah, I'm not arguing Turner there, but it's not a mock on Guerrero. Guerrero is probably a very low risk person also, but that's a low risk for obtaining his value, a low parameter risk. The categorical risk is enormous when you don't take somebody in the first round. I'm just throwing that out there. The other question, in terms of lessons learned, are case for an ace. Do you think that it's imperative to take somebody in the first 4 rounds who's an ace pitcher, or take 2 in the first 4 rounds? Is that something that we can learn from this year, do you think?
Me?
Yeah.
No. I mean, maybe 4 rounds, yeah. But in the first 2 rounds, I think it was a real big thing to grab pocket aces this year. I don't know, man. Jose Ramirez is sitting out there, and I'm taking Jose Ramirez I'm looking at steals ahead of any pitcher. I think I can find pitching. You can't find steals in the same way. And look at Garrett Cole. Are you going to trust Garrett Cole? Can you pick Jacob deGrom right now? Do I really want to be holding the bag on Max Scherzer when the Max Scherzer experiment is over? Sure, you could look at Walker Buehler, but that's the first time he's ever thrown that many innings. Who knows that he's going to come back and do it again? Aaron Nola was taken in the second round. Luis Castillo was taken in the second round. Tyler Glasnow was taken in the second round. Clayton Kershaw was taken in the second round. Blake Snell was taken in the third round. I mean, I don't know that I want to be putting that risk out there. That's my take today. I may change my mind, but at the end of the season, that's where I am.
I don't think you need to. The pocket ace strategy, I think, is putting a lot of eggs in a basket, and you're giving up a lot of important value and statistics. So I'm not a fan of that. I'm a fan of getting some good anchor and then waiting a bit. I'd rather do that than wait and get a fourth and a fifth round pitcher. I'm looking at. I did some analysis today on what value was left in the first round. So the average pitcher taken in the first round walked away with $19 of value. The average pitcher in the second round walked away with $17 of value, and so on and so forth. The drop-off happened after the fourth round. Then you get only $8 of value, negative value in the sixth round. So if you didn't pick a pitcher in the first 4 rounds, there was a serious drop-off to the next. There's another drop-off that occurs after the 12th. So in the 11th round, there's an average of 10. In the 12th round, there's an average of $10. But then there's a drop-off, -2, 1, -7, 2, 1. So there's almost no value in pitching somewhere in the middle. If you're taking a pitcher from rounds 12 through 20, you're getting very, very little return on investment. And then there's some darts later. The actual average return on the 24th round, 25th round, those are positive. But so if you think about what I just said, it basically begs you to say you take an ace in the first 2-3 rounds, you take a number 2 starter in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and then you wait on pitching to the end. That's really what the model says this year as to what happened. And actually, this is what happened the last couple of years as well. So that's my thought on what you do with pitching.
Based on this year alone, if you look at some of the stats, and I did some a lot of digging here, of the top 10 ADP starters from this year, how many of them do you think started 30 games of the top 10 ADP from this year?
Scherzer did.
Cole did. Giolito did.
Bueller did.
The answer is 7. 7 out of the top 10 ADP pitchers pitched 30 or more starts.
That's pretty good, actually.
Going from 10 to 20, how many had 30 starts?
2.
The answer is 4. Yeah. So I think that you really should be getting that starter in the one of those top 10 starters, which is probably going to be in the first or second round, and then you can wait, like you're saying, Ariel. But I think you want some stability, and you get more stability in those first 2 rounds as opposed to a third or a fourth round guy.
Yeah, the question is also volume. I think that there's a much bigger guarantee that if you take a pitcher in the first 3 rounds, that they're going to get close to 200 innings as opposed to anywhere else.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I hear you guys. Yeah. And I'm not. I haven't dug deep enough, but there's a piece of me that is going back old school, back in the day when taking a pitcher early was dumb, right? Because they're so risky. And it's like, well, but then we looked at last year, and I even made an argument at a certain point to bring starting pitchers up in my dynasty rankings over at The Athletic. But I'm sort of leaning away now a little bit. I'm nervous about it, Like what happens if Corbin Burns has some arm trouble? Then you're done. I mean, sure, there's Mike Trout has calf trouble, but I don't know, Shane Bieber, it's just there. Even Giolito, like what did he bring back this year? Not that much. He wasn't great. He wasn't great. He wasn't worth a first round pick. I'd rather take the Freddie Freeman there or the Bryce Harper there.
Giolito, I had as like an 11th round pitcher according to my values. He was not even going to be on my list. But all those other guys.
How about Darvish? Where was Darvish on your list?
I was lower than most. Nola, though, I was higher. I was fine on Nola. Luis Castillo, I was fine on him. Look, here's the point to everybody. There's gonna be misses, but the way to look at it is if you're indifferent about your draft position, you want a starter, and sure, you could be higher on a certain person or not, but if you need a starter, you're sort of going to be indifferent to what's on the board. And if you do that, you just go by the numbers, and the numbers say that taking a starter in the first 3 rounds is a must. That's what the numbers say.
I mean, look at. I'm going to use my AL labor for a minute. I didn't have an ace. They were all $10, $11, and $12, and came in second in ERA, second in WHIP, and first in wins.
That's a mono league, so it plays a little bit differently because you have to guarantee playing time. So it's a little bit different.
It is a little bit different, but the point is that if you choose the right
but
pitchers,
also mono leagues, the values tend towards hitters. Like the starters are going to be pushed downwards, whereas in a mixed league, the starters are going to be pushed up.
All right, and it also depends on the format, because if it's a points league, then I'm thinking while we're having this conversation that we're looking at Roto. Is that
Roto.
how you guys are thinking of it?
Yes, it's Roto.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because if it was head-to-head, I'd have a different conversation.
Yeah, correct. Of course, it matters there. Next question. Salvador Perez had an unbelievable year. He actually finished second on my player rater as far as his Roto value. Do you think that Salvador Perez / JT Realmuto types we're talking about, not just elite but super elite catchers, are they worth paying up for and sacrificing a, I don't know, third, fourth round pick on him? Do you think that's worth it?
Ravine, you go first.
No. Catcher,
Okay.
no. I would spend my money in a safer place. I'm not saying that Salvador Perez or JT Realmuto aren't safe, but I'd rather spend a third round pick or a fourth round pick on another big bat that gives me a little more guarantee than a catcher. Yes, Salvador Perez will play more DH coming up probably next year, I assume. But he's not going to hit 48 home runs again. You can't. I mean, how many catchers? The first time a catcher ever did that. So what you're paying for next year, if you're paying in the third round, is you're paying for last year's stats. That's what contracts are. Teams are paying players for last year's stats. You're not paying for what's happening this year. If they are, then the Mets should have paid Francisco Lindor a couple of bucks. It's a matter of paying what you think the person is valued right now. And when you draft a catcher like Perez or like JT Realmuto, not that they are the two best catchers out there, but I would not spend the draft capital at that point. I'd rather spend it somewhere else.
Ian?
I'm not nearly in Ruvain's intensity about it at all. And certainly if it falls to the fourth round, there's a league I played in. It's a one-catcher league, and I think that that's also somewhat dependent, right? If it's a two-catcher league, if it's a one-catcher league. But this was a one-catcher league, 20-team dynasty, Devil's Rejects, and we had Salvador Perez on the team, and we won home runs by 30 home runs over the course of the season. And it was all because of Salvador Perez. He played 161 games. He hit in 161 games this season. I think there's value there. I don't know that I'm going to spend it in the third. But if he's hanging around in the late fourth, early fifth, I'm going to do it. And if it's, let's say in an auction, 15-team auction, Ariel, if I put down $24 for Salvador Perez, you going to 25?
I mean, I bought Salvador Perez in both Labor and Tout Wars this year, and I did not regret it.
No.
I mean, here's my deal with getting a high-priced catcher.
And remember, I had to push you in Labor to get Salvador Perez. You initially didn't want him, and I said, no, go get him. So you were actually on the fence about paying that much that we paid for him.
Well, how much did you pay? What did you pay?
I think we paid 19. But again, I think for that specific case, I said let's spend 10 and get like Grandal. But the market premium was low. So here's the difference between all the stuff we were talking about before with steals versus catcher. Steals is a market premium issue, meaning there's a high demand for stolen bases. That's why people pay more. But there's a scarcity issue with catchers, right?
Absolutely.
There's just only a few catchers who are above replacement. The rest stink. So the premium that you're paying, especially in a two-catcher league, is very high, but it's not a premium. It's what they're actually worth because of scarcity. So the answer that I have, it's a little bit of a cop-out answer. You can think of it, but it really depends on what everybody else is doing. If the market premium is low all around, if people just don't like paying for catchers, you should be paying a lot more for Salvador Perez. Or I'm saying, you should buy him at the lower excess market premium.
Right.
If everybody is pushing up, you don't want to spend a fortune on Salvador Perez. Meaning, it's easier to see this in a draft. I'm going to give you the exaggerated case. If the third catcher is going in the sixth round, Salvador Perez in the third is a tremendous bargain. But if the third catcher goes in the 12th round, Salvador Perez in the third is really weak. Right? It really depends on what everybody else does. One other thing about catchers, wait, let
me interrupt you. I'm sorry. If it's in the fourth round, just clean, late fourth, and Salvador Perez is sitting there in a two-catcher, 15-team NFBC-style league, try to forget the market premium right now, where everyone else is going. Do you think he brings value enough to be worth that pick because of what he gives to that position? Because nobody else is getting near that many at-bats compared to what Perez is doing.
Yeah, and that comes to my other point here. The answer is, in a pure value answer, it's yes by a mile. The one problem, and this is for everybody to decide, is that there's a risk issue because let's say your first baseman gets hurt. then you can pick up a guy off the waiver wire. He's going to be lousy, but he brings some stats.
Sure.
If Salvador Perez gets hurt, your replacement for him utterly stinks. He's going to bat 200, 190. I mean, you're getting garbage. So there's the risk of injury for him affects your team a lot more than the risk of injury for somebody else. So you got to be cautious about paying too much of a premium because of the injury risk. It's the same deal with Mondesi for steals, but it's true for catcher.
But he's at the end of the 4th round. It's the 60th pick. You're on the clock.
I'm picking him next year because I think that he's going to start DHing more games. And
He can't DH anymore. He DH'd every single game that he wasn't catching. He was DHing. I mean, he played every day.
Right. Yes. So I'm saying because I think he's catcher / the DH where the injury risk is less, he's worth more. And if the DH comes to the National League, actually the same
Then
can be
you can
true
do-
for
right.
JT Realmuto.
But that's why I don't put Real Muto in that same category for that exact reason. Because Real Muto, if he's not starting behind the plate, maybe he'll get a game or two at first base. But Sal Perez is batting 3rd for the Kansas City Royals.
No, but if
batting
the
4th.
DH comes to the National League, then it's true.
But then who would you pick? Who would you take? Let's say the DH is there. Who do you have hired next year, Sal Perez or JT Realmuto?
I haven't done my numbers. It's probably going to be Sal Perez.
It's going to be Perez. It's because Realmuto is not going to steal as much as he starts getting older. Also, catchers in general don't steal, and Realmuto, some of his value is in his stolen bases because he gives you like 10, 15. Used to give you 10, 15 stolen bases.
Yeah.
Those are good days.
Next lesson learned: closers. I kind of think that the lesson learned here is pay up for a closer. I mean, again, running the numbers, if you picked a closer in the 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, they pretty much held value on the average. And then if you look all the way down, the return is negative. I've got no value from round 17 all the way through 27 on average for a relief pitcher. So it's pay up for a closer, and otherwise you're play the waiver wire, which if you bought one of those Toronto Blue Jays in April and then brought another Toronto Blue Jay in April, you busted 40% of your fab for nothing.
All right, so I'm going to share my theory about closers that I've had for a number of years and that I've used for a number of years, and it seems to work. Okay, I use the back page as my guide. What does that mean? It means that if someone loses their job as a closer, and it is a big story on the back page of the New York Post, that's the guy you want, right? So that's a very small number of guys, and you got to get one of them. That's my theory. I got Liam Hendricks everywhere this year. Remember, I paid the extra $1 in labor, made extra $2 above value, because even though I got a little nervous there when Kimbrel came over, because Hendricks was going to be the closer. He was going to have every opportunity. That's why I was a little nervous about Edwin Diaz. Aroldis Chapman, same deal. Kenley Jansen, I invested in last offseason, because if Kenley Jansen lost that job, the clubhouse would be a story. And managers don't like stories. They don't like distractions. Ask Urban Meyer. Sorry, a little football joke, which I don't even follow. But that's the point to me. You got to get one of those guys. You got to get one of the elite closers in baseball. If you have the opportunity, you got to make sure you get one. And there aren't that many, so you pay up for it. That's definitely in NFBC. You just pay for it. You go get yourself Hendricks, Hader, Chapman, Iglesias, Jansen. And there's probably more that I'm not thinking of. Diaz, we can argue about Diaz. We argue about Diaz. But I say you've got to get one. And then you're only fighting for one. Because anything can happen. Anything can happen. With all the rest of these closers, not only you're wasting draft capital, but like you said, you're wasting your fab money in a way that is probably not going to work. It's very rare that it works. Yeah. So, that people stick. Anyway.
Just to throw in something else, there's a direct correlation. It's very, very well regressed that the more wins a team has, the more saves the team has. So in general, if you're going to pick a team, if the Dodgers were supposed to be a good team, pretty good to pick Kenley Jansen because he's on a good team. So there you go.
And that was the thought behind Liam Hendricks. I think he's the best closer on the best team. That's what I thought, and that's why I paid for him. And I trust his stuff more than I did Chapman, which is why I invested in Hendricks.
Right.
And that was the same thought why me and Ario, invested a lot in Will Smith. We thought he was going to be the closer. We thought it was going to be a good team, so you get a guy who's going to get
Right.
the most of the
Good for
saves.
you guys. I was not on Will Smith at all. I was so nervous about that situation. I just thought that there were too many. I wasn't convinced. And if I'm not convinced about a team's situation, I don't want it.
Now,
I
you
don't
know what?
want it.
The thing about Will Smith, though, is that Atlanta bullpen had a zillion lefties and one righty. So
Yeah,
the
he was
closer was going to be a
only
lefty.
righty. But then what do you do with someone like Jake McGee, who came out of nowhere? He had horrible seasons. I mean, a couple of decent seasons in the past, but he was
he did.
with and that was with Tampa. But he came out of nowhere, and he's a lefty, and he was playing for a bad team. He was going to the season. They thought everyone thinks the Giants were going to be a bad team.
McGee was a
Everyone had
dart. He was a
It
dart.
was,
Yeah,
that
he
was
was.
literally a dart.
So
and
was
he turned out to be
Melanson.
one of the top closers.
So
So
was
was
Melanson.
Melanson for sure.
So
And I
was
stayed
Melanson,
I stayed
exactly.
as far away from that San Diego Padre, the San Francisco Giants. I didn't want anything to do with that. I was drafting Kimbrel. I was drafting Hendricks. And Kimbrel is a dangerous player to draft because I should have had the foresight to say, well, what if the Cubs fall out of it and he gets moved? It did not occur to me that he would move to a team where he would not be the closer.
Yeah,
because
that was a low probability on that.
Yeah,
you know.
that was
yeah.
tough, and he stunk in Chicago. Thank goodness, actually, because I
Yeah.
had a lot more Hendricks than I did the one team I had Kimbrel on.
Yeah. Another question here. What lesson learned? We talk about market premium in terms of paying more. How about market discount? What I found this year, it worked, that there was a market discount on corner infielders, meaning you can wait and you take a corner late. Like, let me give you a couple examples. How about Joey Votto, Yuli Gurriel, Austin Riley, Justin Turner, Jonathan India, Jared Walsh, Mountcastle, Escobar. I can name you 10 of these corner infielders taken very late in drafts, and they turned a huge profit. That's a market discount for corner infielders. You do not have to clog them up early. Do you agree with that market discount? Is that a lesson to be learned to next year? Obviously, you have to see what the player pool is, but I find that could go on again.
People who listen to Ariel Cohen's and Ruvain's show, what Ariel's talking about right here was one of the main keys to my success in AL Labor. I firmly believe that the reason I won the league was because of David Fletcher at second base and Jose Iglesias, believe it or not, at middle infield, because it's AL only. There was a glut at the back of the middle infield. So I paid up for Tim Anderson. I paid $30 for Tim Anderson, but then took the $8, I think it was $8 for David Fletcher, who was until the end of the season just phenomenal, and then $4 for Jose Iglesias, which seems like a lot, but it's not, right? But that's where the glut was. That was like the biggest, I think, one of the biggest values that I learned from learning the values is where that glut is, and then saving your money and using it in other spaces. Now, I would argue that Jose Ramirez, there are certain players that bust out of that, right? Because Ramirez being able to give you the stolen bases. I don't know. I'll send it back to you. Well, first go to Ruvain, but then Ruvain, you answer, then I'm going to ask a question. Ruvain, go.
Sure. Okay. The corner infield, you could have had so many cheap guys later on, and if you would have waited, you could have paid the market premium for those middle infielders and still gotten the Austin Riley to play your corner infield and gotten a lot of value out of him. So I think the values can stay the same because I think the middle infield guys, the shortstops, all the ones that are going to be changing teams this offseason, those are the ones that are going to be hyped up. Those are the ones that are going to say, "Oh, I'm going to do well in this new surroundings. I'm going to bust out." What if Trevor Story goes to the Yankees? His values, people think his values are going to go through the roof, which means that the corner infield is the place to continue to get that market discount.
The market discount. Yeah. Okay. So now, Ariel, with the understanding that corner infield has this glut, right? Does that discount Jose Ramirez for you? Or are there some players that are just so good and bring so much value to a position that you don't expect to get, right? To get those stolen bases from third base opens up so many other possibilities for you in the middle infield, right? So maybe you don't need it at second base. You can pay cheap for Jonathan Scope to get the extra power. Or do you say, no, stay away from Jose Ramirez because there's so many other options?
The top of the draft is a different animal than the bottom of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
The top couple rounds, I'm not looking. I'm looking for the stats and the profile for the player. I'm not looking at the position. Other than I don't want to double up. I would not want to take Freddie Freeman and Jose Ramirez in the first two picks because then I'm locked in, in corner. I want to take an outfielder if possible, but I'm good with taking any position. Like the
That was my
position
question.
doesn't bother me.
That was my, and that's my
Yeah.
instinct as well. Is that when you have a guy like that, that even so spend your money. I still always think about auctions. They're so much more fun than drafting. Personally, it's just you really get to control how the auction goes and what your team looks like. But for me, I was going to say the same thing. That if you have the opportunity to get Jose Ramirez, you put him in that lineup. It just gives you so much flexibility elsewhere.
Yeah. So I actually think, to answer my original question about corner infielders, I actually think there's going to be a large market premium for middle infielders because just as Ruvain said, they're changing teams. There's going to be hype. I kind of think that middle infielders are going to be more overvalued than they should this year, and I don't know if I want to pay that premium. I mean, this year you found a lot of guys high up, Bogarts, Tim Anderson. I thought there was a plethora of guys in the middle. I even think Bo Bichette was very undervalued for where he went. I think that you're not going to have that. I think that they're going to be actually a little bit out of reach, and so the outfield to me, I think, is what's going to open up next year. Yeah, that's my opinion. Is the outfield's going to be where you might want to pay the market premium, and you'll have the glutton of either low-priced middle infielders later on that are worth more, or corners will stick again in the bottom.
Well, as the season went on, and you needed players for your team, most teams needed outfielders, and you scoured the waiver wire. The outfielders position is there's so many players, but it just felt so shallow that I think you need to go deeper in the outfield earlier on, just because it just seems like there's a huge drop off on the wires, like ridiculous.
Yeah, outfielders need to be taken earlier. I think you can always find a corner infield late, and I think next year you're going to be able to find the middle infield late in a mixed league. Outfielders are what you need to really look for earlier and middle of the draft. I think that's when you want to stock up on that. Did you agree with that, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I'm thinking about it because also somehow I was able to find middle infielders, guys who are getting playing time. Again, I'm focusing on AL only a lot, right? But Owen Miller was getting some pretty regular playing time, and Yu Chang found some, and Andy Ibanez shows up, right? Like that's the second base, third base, like they find playing time. The outfield is more challenging because you see more platoons out there than you see in the infield on the grass. Because it's more about like we need the big bat. Doesn't matter so much with the glove. So then you run into Austin Slater, Steven Duggar issues, and you just I don't want to have anything to do with that. I really do want those outfielders that are going to play every day. So yeah, I think as of now, again, it's early and we're going to be able to see things from 20,000 feet. Not today because we're still looking back at this past Sunday. But that sounds okay to me. I just keep feeling like maybe you don't spend so much on pitching. I don't know. It's just just have this vibe. It's like, I get what you guys are saying about try to get that ace, but I want to get it at a good price. I think I got burned by Shane Bieber in Tout Wars. I spent $35, which felt like
I trust the process, not
discount.
the results. It was the wrong guy. You could have gone for Cole. I mean, you happened to get Bieber in that one.
Well, because Cole was $43 and Bieber was $35.
Right.
I wasn't going after Bieber. He was valued at 40, 38,
nobody
39.
But nobody had a $10 difference in Cole versus Bieber. That 10 looked really good. It's trust the process, not the results. You happen to get the wrong guy. That's what happens.
Yeah.
But we had Luis Castillo in a league that burned us. Okay, it's the wrong guy for one league. That league we finished fourth. Most of the other leagues we did well. It's trust the process, not the results. Just a general, just the last part of this segment, just to throw it out there to you. Are there any other? What do you think is a real big success that you had this year, or maybe a failure this year, or something that you'll do differently in 2022?
The failures. I feel like I was chasing steals in Tout Wars. I mean,
Okay.
I had it's a tough draft. I drafted Buxton. I drafted Louis Robert. I drafted Eloy Jimenez. I drafted Shane Bieber. I drafted Aaron Hicks, and the whole season, I ended up and I was able to finish 7th, which felt like a huge success, living down at 13th and 14th for so much of the season, dealing with the injuries. But I never had enough speed, and that's part of what my thought process is, because I think I had 2 points in stolen bases over the course of the season. And I think I tried to pay. I back of the draft, I wanted Elvis Andrus to bring me some steals, and that just didn't work out. So it's like, although, Louis Robert would have stolen 25 bases, and Buxton, if he had stayed healthy, would have stolen 25 bases. But I still felt light in stolen bases coming out anyway. And it's hard to come back from that. It's just tough to come back.
Ruvain, how about you? A success or failure, or something you do different?
Well, success. I think we were both able to manage our teams pretty well, because our teams were pretty deep, and we were able to get through a lot of injuries, and we balanced the team, and it was very good, and I was great. I think the problem that I run into is the exact same thing. I had a problem last year, and it's just a complete random draw, and that's that I had too many players from one team. Last year, I had too many Cardinals. They missed too much time. They had too many delays, too many shortened games. I missed a lot of stats. This year, yes, I'm a Met fan, but we had too many Mets on the team. It just happened to be that was the worst time to have these Mets. We thought Alonso was going to have a big year. We had McNeil for average. We had Dom Smith coming off a big year. We had Edwin Diaz hoping for a big year. And you know what? They had so many doubleheaders. We lost so many possible innings for them to play that it was just so hard to catch up. And not only that, the rainouts were so early in the season that by the time they got to the rainout, to the makeups, a lot of them were injured or the season was over already, and it just really didn't matter anymore. So we lost a lot of time, and again, it just happened to be where they were valued, where we valued them, and it happened to be that we had a lot from one team. I think we have to, I guess, call it diversify our portfolio a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I think we diversified across all leagues. Just that one league, for some reason, it came up. But listen, you can diversify, and if you have to get a discount on some players to take too many on the same team. I'll give you a success and a failure of mine. The success, and I'll say it because I want to just call attention to my volatility metrics. But Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette, I had registered. I have 3 volatility metrics. Some interprojection, standard deviation, skew, and some categorical risk. Bichette was low risk, low risk, low risk. Upside. Like all my volatility metrics said, wow, this guy actually is probably better than the projections even say. This guy has a very tight projection. There's no way this guy is going to bust. And when you're doing your pricing, not only do I say, well, Bichette is worth $30, so I'm gonna, and that's what my valuation said, 30. But when you see projections are so tight and are so low risk, it tells me that I have to add a risk adjustment, and for his risk adjustment is positive. So I said, all right, well, I can actually spend $3 extra on Bichette to guarantee it. Any guy who's low risk, that's why those 5 category guys, it's worth paying up for, not just for the stats, but for the risk. I mean, you take a guy like Mark Canha. Mark Canha does a little bit of everything, and he's nowhere near. He's all the way down in the middle of the draft, but he has runs. He has stolen bases. He hits homers. He can have a bad year in homers, but he'll still give you value elsewhere. He can have a bad year in stolen bases, but he still provides the runs. Taking guys who are more categorically spread, it reduces the risk of your portfolio, and that's just such an important thing to note, and I think I did that well. In terms of failure, I think I can improve on the waiver wire. Not that I do a bad job with the waiver wire, but I don't have time to go so deep to get who's going to be the next guy, who do I take the stab at. Like, I was listening to Phil Dussault, who had a great year in the NFBC, talk, and he grabbed Ranger Suarez 2 weeks earlier before anybody for $2. Like, I got to figure out how to do that.
But that goes back, Ariel, that goes back to your first question, right? Because as you were talking, I was thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, knowing the players, not Ranger Suarez, because that came out of nowhere for everybody. Geez, and how amazing was he?
Yeah.
But there's, I keep trying to get you to play Dynasty, don't I? Or keeper leagues. And you're like, no, I'm not going to do it, right? But here's why I think it's so important to actually, for a player as successful as you, Ruvain, you as well, because it gives you a wider understanding of the players, not just the players that are in the major leagues right now, but the prospects and the kids who are coming up. So someone like the guy I keep thinking about, like Austin Riley, who could have guessed? Well, James Anderson's been talking about Austin Riley for 3 years. In our original RDI draft, maybe 4 years, our original RDI draft, Austin Riley was on our list and we took him. Okay? So what does that do for you? When you have a full understanding of the prospects, that way you're not as surprised necessarily when a player who has struggled in the majors finally starts to step into it, right? So there's one thing to know Wander Franco and Julio Rodriguez and Jared Kelenic, sorry guys, but what about the guys who are in the 40 to 50 range, the 50 to 100 range, the 100 to 200 range? If you're watching them as they're coming up and you're following them in that way, when they come up on the wire, you know to be looking for them. I'm just putting that out there. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that might, your immensely talented game that you have, it could only lift it for you. So to play in a dynasty league, even if you're not great at it, it gives you so much else when it comes to the redraft world.
Are you inviting me to the $4,000 buy-in dynasty league? Is that why you're?
I don't have a $4,000 buy-in league. That sounds pretty interesting. I have to say.
But point taken. And I just said it right now that's a hole in my game, and it's mostly because of the time, because it requires more time, and I do the most I can with my time. But that's definitely a hole that would be worth filling.
Can I ask you guys a question about a player that people seem to be so terribly in love with, and I just kind of like, but I'm not so in love with?
Sure.
I saw a player, I see the new pitcher rankings coming out, and Sandy Alcantara is being talked about as a top 10 pitcher. I just don't know that that's right. I mean, right? I mean, I'm asking. I'm not saying, I'm not saying, I'm just saying, like, is he really a third-round pick at this point, based on the year that he had? But if he's a top 10 pitcher, and I'm not saying he's not, I'm not saying that he's not great. I'm not saying there isn't great upside. I love the stuff. I mean, I watch the stuff. That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at how can I hit this? You know, would I be able to hit this? Well, none of them. I couldn't hit any of them. But you know, the difference between watching him or watching Mike Minor, clearly Alcantara's got great stuff. But is he really a top 10 pitcher? Is there anything in the profile that suggests that, or in the stats that suggest that? Because I own him in a dynasty league. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ruvain.
His volume. In 2019, he pitched 197 innings. This year, he pitched 205 innings. And look at those strikeouts. It went from 150 to 201 this year. That's the jump that you're looking for. But
so do you really think he could be a top 10 pitcher?
I think he could. I think he's a sleeper to become a top 10 pitcher. I don't think he's going to get enough. I mean, yes, wins are a complete variable, but you need to have a certain amount of wins to be a top 10 pitcher. Yes, DeGrom is different because if you can pitch with a sub 2 ERA and a sub 1 WHIP, then that's fine. But nobody's going to do that. So Henry Alcantara is not going to do that. So he's going to need to win 15 games or 16 games along with those 200 strikeouts to be a top 10 pitcher. Is he going to do that on the Marlins? I don't know. That's the problem. He needs for that next step. He needs a good team. He had 15 losses this year. 15 with an ERA of 3.19 and 107. If he can turn 5 of those losses into wins, he is a top 10 pitcher.
But you know what? Okay. The answer actually doesn't matter because from you saying this, he's overvalued. And if people are going to pick him in the top 10, to turn a profit on him, he's got to be in the top 8? The answer is no. The answer is he's just, don't waste your time on him. He's overvalued.
Well, and I'm not saying that he can't be a top 10 pitcher. It's something that I'm noticing from people who I think are great. Like, I think the list I saw was an amazing guy, knows his stuff better than almost anybody. But it was just one thing that kind of struck me because he was taken in the 8th round. I bought him. I got him in different leagues this year, and he was good. He was good, really good, but not, I don't know, just not to that level. And I think that, Ruvain, what you said is very indicative because talking about the 3.19 ERA with a 1.07 WHIP and having that volume it's very impressive. So thanks. You know,
he was a top 20 pitcher this year, so I can definitely.
And
see
he's young.
I think
26. Yeah.
Yeah, I think top 10 is pushing it, but top 15, top 20 for sure. But I think that, again, I'm less interested about what he's going to be, or I'm more interested in, is there a profit to be had on him? And I think the answer is no.
Yeah,
I think
people
I'm
are
just
addressing
going to
that high. You're not going to get that profit. You want to get that lower guy. So you want to get maybe The second guy in the Marlins, maybe you want to take a chance on that Sixto
And
Sanchez, or maybe you want to take a chance on the Max Mayer coming up and
And you
being
can't bank on him
worth
for
something.
wins, as Ruvain said. So if you're going to bank on a number 2 starter, you're not going to bank on him for wins. So it's a problem right away. Unless you bank on him for good ratios, which he has a good ballpark. So the answer is he's definitely usable, but probably way too overpriced is what's going to happen.
Well, that's why that was my question.
Yeah. All right, let's quickly do the fantasy MVPs for the year, and I'm going to say that the fantasy MVP for the year will be.
You're going to take Cedric Mullins the third?
It's Cedric Mullins, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's Cedric Mullins the third. That's it. That's the closest I'll come to the impression tonight.
You taking Haniger out for Cedric Mullins the third?
That's what you said. That's what you said.
Haniger was great this year too, by the way.
Yes, he was. But I was in that particular moment. I was right that the right play was to draft, even with the bulk, with Hicks going down, with Buxton going down, and with Eloy going down, and with Louis Robert going down. I mean, talk about an outfield that was decimated by injury. That was what that Tout Wars team was. And had I had Cedric Mullins III, had I taken him in the second round of the reserve draft, which is when I wanted to take him, and I should have because that's what I wanted to do, then it would have been that would have served quite nicely. I think he was certainly, but I'm going to put another guy out there too because Cedric Mullins III is the obvious choice. I got a couple other names that I want to add to that list on the hitter side. I'm going to say Shohei Ohtani because I got him either if I didn't get Stanton, who I had high hopes for this season. I really thought Stanton was going to get comfortable in New York and really show off his power and kind of do what he did really towards the end of the season. Ended up having a perfectly fine season. Actually, what was his number? Like, how much did he earn? Probably like $22. But if
Shohei
I didn't,
Ohtani owned.
no, sir.
Sorry,
Giancarlo Stanton. But if I didn't get Stanton around 130 in FBC, I got Ohtani everywhere else.
Stanton earned 15, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Well, but Ohtani, to me, because I would get him in the 220s, 210s. That's when he was being drafted. And he was, to me, the fantasy MVP. Jorge Polanco, also Jared Walsh, a guy that I was really high on coming in, and a guy that I did not have. Well, first I'm just going to say this because it's fun to say. Adolis was great. But Tyler O'Neill, I owned him 0. Didn't see it coming. Couldn't have expected it. I mean, the 34 home runs, 15 are stolen bases with a 286 average. Not for me. He didn't do any of that for me this season. But those to me are the fantasy MVPs of the season on the hitter side.
100%. By the way, Cedric Mullins finished as the number 5 outfielder. Mitch Haniger finished as the number 11 outfielder.
Yes,
so,
but it wasn't going to replace Mitch Haniger. That wasn't the idea.
I know.
But if you look at the 17th or 18th round of the ADP from NFBC, I think you can pick anyone there. Jesse Winker, you get him so late. Look what he did. Austin Riley, we mentioned. Chris Taylor, how valuable was Chris? Besides last night hitting the walk-off home run, but he can play in any position, and his value was through the roof. And you mentioned Jared Walsh. Those players in the getting those in the 17th and 18th round, that's so much value right there on top of whatever you had. Hopefully, if you had something higher up, but those really were the ones that can put your team from just good to great.
And Jorge Polanco. I don't know if I mentioned
Jorge Polanco, yes.
But boy, Jorge Polanco was great this year.
I'll throw in Salvador Perez. I think that having the number 2 overall guy as a catcher, just unbelievable. And Brandon Crawford, he's a guy that came way off on the waiver wire. You mentioned Adolis Garcia. He's the waiver wire winner of the week of the year. But Brandon Crawford really is next. And he had it all in one shot, so you could have not played him in the end and still had all the value.
How about are we going to do the bust? Because I just want to say a player I hate. I just hate. Can I say a player I hate?
Sure, why not?
Eugenio Suarez. Oh my God.
Yeah, it didn't work out.
God. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. And I had, that was not.
You'd rather that Joey Votto than the Eugenio Suarez there.
No doubt. One guy I want to put out for next year, just as I'm looking, I think Gleyber Torres is going to be super cheap next year. I think he's going to probably be bought for $13. And I think that's a good price for Gleyber Torres next year. I think
the bust of the year is Adalberto Mondesi.
Yeah, okay. I mean,
Yes.
if we're going to use that metric,
you held him all year.
But or
People
Mike
held
Trout.
him earlier.
But what about
Guilty.
Mike Trout?
Mike Trout is number one in terms of value lost. He earned a negative $4. He would cost $44. Mondesi earned negative $8 for 34.
Yeah, but
Mondesi
still,
was more integral for your stats.
I mean, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was injured, and we can have the argument, and we can certainly have the argument. What do you think the number on Mondesi is going into next year?
What do you think that he's gonna go?
Yeah.
With Mondesi, the answer is I really don't care because I'm probably not going to take him for whatever my value is.
A lot of people listening who will care, though.
No, but where will he go? I'm going to say fourth round.
Well, how about this? Would you rather have Acuna going into next year coming off an injury, or Mondesi coming off an injury?
Acuna for sure.
Acuna, no.
Okay, then would you rather have DeGrom next year or Acuna?
It's a different animal, but
Yeah, I think
the
Acuna.
answer is Acuna.
Yeah, I think it's Acuna.
It has to be Acuna.
I mean, the injury that Acuna is coming back from, and you're the injury guy, people come back well.
He's going to be so undervalued. I'm going to have so much Ronald Acuna next year. It's going to be great. He's going to be so undervalued.
But I think people are going to catch on to that over the course of time, because the thing about Acuna is, the stolen bases are amazing, but the hit tool's there too. I mean, he hits for average, he hits for power, he does a lot of great stuff. I don't, I see some early NFBCs going out where he's showing up in the second round. It's not gonna.
I mean, Acuna. Here's the thing: Acuna's price is going to spike, and all the value is going to be lost as soon as he steps on the field in spring training.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he played in the spring training game. That's it.
Well, how about this? How about Acuna or Jose Ramirez?
That's a good one for next year.
I want Jose Ramirez.
I think Acuna.
Really? I think I go Ramirez. I don't take Ramirez just for the safety of it.
I'm gonna go Acuna for the steals and for the what's it called? The outfield eligibility also. I think that'll play a little bit. It's close. It's close.
Though.
You can't do wrong, right? The answer is you go in an auction. You go with whoever's cheaper. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if you're on a draft, you take. If you're on the wheel, you take Ramirez and Acuna. And then you got
no way Ramirez is finishing to the wheel, but I've seen some places where Acuna was going like 17 and Trout was going 18. I will take Acuna Trout 15, 16, and I will not think twice about that.
What about pitching MVPs, starter and reliever, Ian?
Robbie Ray.
Yeah, it's
Robbie
Ray.
And you know how I had Robbie Ray, Cedric Mullins on the AL Labor team. That's how it happened. And Hunter Renfroe, right? But I mean, I had a $3 Cedric Mullins and a $4 Robbie Ray, and that's how it goes.
Yeah, Robbie Ray led the majors in strikeouts with 248. Anybody who know who came second with 247?
Was it Zach Wheeler?
Zach Wheeler. Yeah, that's right.
Nice.
Robbie Ray, and
that's a guy. I think I was way up wrong on Zach Wheeler. I wish I had him somewhere, and I avoided him like the plague.
We traded Jazz Chisholm for Wheeler.
I remember when you did that. Oh, you were right, and you were pleased. Well,
that was a good trade.
And by the way, Ariel, who did I compare? Who did I compare Robbie Ray to a couple years ago?
So this is true. This is true. And
I have an article written about it.
Yeah, Ruvain was very high on Robbie Ray years ago, and he compared him to Max Scherzer.
Yes, but so if he ever got control, that's all he needed. He needed to control his walks.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Hold the phone. And this is what I was talking about with the opening conversation, which I think is the most important of all of the conversations. If you're understanding the players and paying attention, because I had the same. I have been Robbie Raying for years because I love the stuff. I also love the grunt. Robbie Grunt Ray. Like, I love it. I love the way he pitches. I think the pants are a little tight, but so be it. But the fact that it all came down because he's throwing 95 to 97 from the left side. And to me, all it was going to take was finding that command. And that's why paying attention to the players and hearing that he was 26 for 28, that's not luck. You cannot throw 26 for 28 strikes lucky. Something has to have shifted. And that's to me, really important.
Yeah. So what happened with Ray this year is, the walks. I mean, his whip was 105. His walk rate, which was 18% in 2020, went down to 7%, a career low. But it's also his stuff. His fastball is up 2 miles an hour from where it was 2 years ago, and it's actually back up to when he started pitching in the majors. And he ditched the curveball, and he increased his fastball usage 10 extra percent. So he said, I'm throwing harder. I'm going to throw it more. And he got more pinpoints. So it all came together for him. It did.
But you know what? Next year, he's going to go in the second round, and I'm not going to touch him. That's a weak spot. Well, no, I'm not going to touch him in an auction if he's cheap. But part of my problem is I'm not going to own Cedric Mullins next year, and I'm not going to own Robbie Ray. If I bought him for $3, I'm not going to spend $30.
Anybody who had an outsized year out of the blue is always going to be overvalued. I mean, remember Marcus Semien, when he had that great year 3-4 years ago, he was way overdrafted the following year, but then this year he crept back down to where he usually was, and oh my God. So there's always, very few players who have a really good year, a little bit outsized even, stick with that. The exceptions are guys like Nelson Cruz. But that's a little bit different story because the dude is 40.
Rick Porcello. Rick Porcello won the Cy Young one year, fell off the face of the earth after that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's
same
regression.
idea.
It's regression. Honorable mentions: Carlos Rodon, $26 player, and
For sure.
the bench player, and had him at Adam Wainwright. He was also a bench player, and he was just absolutely phenomenal.
And
That
Kevin
curveball.
Gossman. Kevin Gossman should get a.
Kevin Gossman was the number one player in points leagues this year.
Yeah, because I mean he was a late draft, and so I ended up buying him in a dynasty league to try to compete, and he was quite excellent for a good long time.
We lived with him last year, and we had him in almost every team this year. So we lived with the good and the bad.
Good.
Relief pitcher, I'm going to say it's Emmanuel Clase, who was my bold prediction on the closers. He had a 100.4 mile an hour average fastball, the highest in the majors for any pitcher over 10.
Whoa, time out. Say that again. 104.
100.4 average fastball velocity.
So you're telling me he was so sometimes he would throw 101,
Yes.
and sometimes he threw 107?
Not 107, but it would be 101, 102, yeah.
No, but if it's 104, I mean, you're the actuary.
100.4.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, that's
between 90 and 98 and 102 for most of
okay.
his
No. I misheard.
Yeah,
I heard him
yeah.
say 104
No,
average fastball. 100. I missed the point. I missed it. My bad.
Only one player had a higher one than him, but he didn't last long. With Jordan Hicks. But he did. Clase solved his walk problems and his home run problems, and there you go. Karinchak was great, although maybe spider tack was the reason he fell off. I don't know.
He wasn't great. He had a terrible season.
He had a great season for the first month, and that was it.
No, he was terrible. What? No, come on. I own Karen Chak in a dynasty league. Okay, all right. He ended the season in the.
He had a 0 ERA for the first month. Karen Jack.
Okay, all right.
So,
well,
and then
I'm
it
good
was
with
terrible.
Class A. I'm good with Class A.
It's also, and my other two guys, Ranger Suarez, who was relief pitcher eligible. I mean, that came in out of nowhere. 106 innings for 1.36 ERA, 1 WHIP, 8 wins, 4 saves, 107 Ks. That's unbelievable. And Andrew Kittredge, a Rays relief pitcher, but he was a $9 player for free. I had him on almost every team. Lots of wins, lots of saves. Very useful across the board. How about Chad Green, $9 player? You can't make this stuff up. I was high on Chad Green. I had him on every team. So those guys were good. Those relief pitchers more valuable than you think.
Well, who had the most strikeouts for a relief pitcher this year?
Was it Karinchak? No.
No way.
Rafael Iglesias.
Oh, Iglesias?
Yeah.
Okay.
Iglesias
Yes. I'm sorry. It was Hendricks, Iglesias, and then who was number 3?
Not Diaz, was it?
Paul Sewald.
Oh, is it really?
104 strikeouts on the season.
familiar.
306 ERA.
That's a name to
102
consider
whip,
for next year. Paul
10
Sewald.
wins and 11 saves, which is almost like a 2020 player, isn't it? 10 wins and 11 saves?
He's the Chad Green of next year. If he's not the closer, because he's the high leverage guy, and that's the way they use it in Seattle, but he's the Chad Green guy. He's the guy who's going to get you a lot of vulture wins, a save here and there. He's going to get you tons of strikeouts, which is like
you
a fifth
keep him?
starter.
I own him in a keeper league where I can keep 15 players, and I have him cheap.
I mean,
$2
if you have him cheap, then like what I'm saying, he's going to be undervalued. He's going to be cheap to buy. Actually, the answer is you don't, because you can pick him up for cheap.
Get him
cheap.
You can get him
Throw
for
him,
$4 or
yeah.
$5.
Throw him, and then you can pick him cheap.
You know, I want to. Can you guys talk about real quick, and then we all gotta go. I got my better half waiting.
Well, we have to settle some board bets first before you go.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, do your thing first.
No, go ahead, because my wife literally just texted me with a question mark.
All right, sure. So we have to settle some board bets. We had.
I have a feeling I know what this is. This is a little self congratulations on your part. Is that correct? Is that how you want to end the show? You want to end the show with a little pat on your own back?
We have to settle the score here. It's the
All
end
right,
of the
let's
year,
go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, first of all, just to tell all the listeners, because maybe they were following us in terms of labor and tout, unfortunately did not win either. Finished second to Frankie Stamfel in tout. He had a great week, and so he dominated me that last week, so he won. Congratulations to Frank. And labor, I was up Thursday at 3 p.m. with 3 days to go. I was up by 2 points, and some guy got a steal for Chandler, and I didn't get another win, and I actually felt
tight as a drum, huh? Tight as a drum.
Tight as a drum. But the board bets here. Ian came on this year twice in the show already, and he had two $1 board bets.
That's true.
Yeah, the first one was who will finish ahead in TGFBI. We were in the same division, and
yes, we were.
I didn't win the league, but I did finish ahead of you.
You finished third, and I finished fourth.
It's close.
That's correct. And it was pretty close, but yes, you did win that. You did win that. Indeed. I owe you $1.
All right. Very, very big spender there. $1.
Well, I mean, I believe that's what we said.
That is what we said.
I give you 8.
No.
10.
Venmo. He wants Venmo. He collects
I ain't gonna
Venmo.
I'll take a
nothing.
signed picture from George Washington.
No.
No.
No way. Keep going. Keep going.
The other board bet, which I'm more proud of actually, is JD Martinez versus Mondesi. Straight up, I said roto value. I'm taking JD Martinez.
This is true.
Versus Mondesi, and you took Mondesi. Can you tell me, by the way, who led the majors in doubles? There's actually 4 people tied with 42.
Jamer
Candelario, yes.
I would think, is on that list.
Yes.
I'm
42.
going to say, because you're talking about it right now, JD Martinez.
JD Martinez.
Sure, right. And that's I got 2 of them.
Ruvain, any guesses?
I'm going to guess 2 guys, and they're probably pretty close. Bryce Harper, he had a monster year, and we didn't even talk about him, and he had an MVP-type season, so if you had him in fantasy, that'd be great. And another guy who I think you have to think of people who get a lot of hits. So you think Joey Votto, you think a guy like Whit Merrifield, someone like that.
Otani, maybe?
Whit Merrifield.
Played 162 games. That'll do the trick.
Tommy Edman, 41. So yeah, those are the guys. But anyways, again, it's the risk more than anything. Listen, but going into the season, I thought Martinez was bad at $25 player. I thought Mondesi was bad at $20 player. So I said, okay, let's take a $5 overage for even money. Obviously, we didn't come close. Martinez was the clear winner. So that's $2 into my favor. Yeah. Sorry, it's the end of the year. I got to do board bets. Are you still on?
It happens.
Oh, I'm here. Oh yeah, I'm here.
It happens.
All right.
Good. Hey, Ariel, I give you lots of credit. You won both of those bets. The GDD one is more impressive if you think about it. It was good. I'm happy with my season overall. Even losing those $2, I'm still very happy with the way the season went. It will be a memorable year, and most importantly, it was a lot of fun. And I got to spend time with a lot of friends, of which I include you, Ariel. And you too, Ruvain. I don't talk to you nearly as much as I speak to Ariel on the phone. And I certainly don't do impressions of you nearly as much as I do impressions of Ariel. But it was a really great season. And thanks. I must say, I learned a lot from losing last year in Tout Wars. It may have been one of those situations where you lose the battle to win the war, because I feel the 6 was it 6 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, that we really dug into this auction value conversation, so that by the time I got to that AL labor, like, that's where I want it. I want it at the auction. I won that league at the auction. And I made some good moves over the course of the season that certainly helped. Picked up some guys like Carlos Hernandez, made some big trades where I traded Gregory Soto for Max Kepler and Chris Flexen and a $13 Nick Anderson that I was able to trade back in. But it was what happened at that auction. And this is what I would say. Preparation is really important. Like, really understand. So I do agree with you, Ariel. Really do understand where the value is going into next season as you get ready for your drafts. And understand the players too.
Ian, before you go, why don't you just plug everything that you do, and we'll get you out of here.
Okay. I do Under the Radar is a show on the athletic fantasy baseball podcast, and typically it's Tuesdays. During the season, we do it weekly on Tuesdays. In the off season, we're going to do it bi-weekly. It's myself and Derek Van Riper and Nando DeFino, and the three of us have really a really good time every week doing the show. And I also do the Dynasty rankings over at The Athletic amongst the rest of my life, which so it's a lot of fun. Fantasy baseball is a good thing, and I'm grateful for it.
There you go. Fantastic. But before we send you off, Ruvain, why don't you just plug your stuff?
You can follow me on Twitter at MLB Injury Guru, where during the offseason I will continue to tweet about the injuries, their updates, how people are doing after surgery and everything like that. I do have an in-season, which is now over, article with Rotoballer regarding the injuries. And if you are there, we are going to First Pitch Arizona. Me and Ariel, we're going to be having a live episode of Beat the Shift there.
Have fun, guys. One last thing. I'm at Ian Kahn 4 on Twitter. Please don't follow me at Ian Kahn. That's my actor Twitter follow, and you don't want that. It's not going to help you. But Ian Kahn 4, if you want to give a follow over there, I'll be talking about fantasy baseball.
Definitely a good follow. Please do follow him. You can follow me at ATCNY. You can read my stuff over at Fangraphs and at Rotoballer. Hey, the season ended, but for me, I'm the projections and value guy and risk, and so my work is just starting. I mean, my take is the off season, so I'm just going to get started. I've already had 2 articles come out in the last week on Fangraphs, so check them all out. Ian, this was really a fantastic episode. I think we gave the listeners quite a lot of stuff to think about, to noodle, whether you took my side, your side, a lot of stuff we agreed on, a lot of stuff was just from the discussion they thought. So really, thanks for coming on the show, and congratulations on a fantastic year, and really appreciate it.
Hey, it was my pleasure, Ruvain, and thank you again, Ruvain, because without you, my shoulder would still be hurting if you hadn't told me it was a sprained AC joint. So my recommendation, become friends with Ruvain, because he'll come in handy, I tell you. Or shoulder.
I take all insurances.
There you
Thanks,
go.
Guys. It was fun. It was fun. Thanks.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll be here live from Arizona. First Pitch, presented by, I should say, Baseball HQ, the wonderful guys there. So we'll be back in a week for an additional episode. We'll have Derek Carty on the pod live from Arizona. That's definitely going to be a great chat. So that's the story. We're done for this episode. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.